Welcome to the Monday Club in association with Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. And today we're looking at the land of opportunity that is the other side of the Ulster Championship draw. Okay, I'm Neil Loughran, and this week I am joined by Andy Waters and Cahair O'Kane. Guys, good to see you.
We have to say afternoon because this is when people watch it. Really, it's still the morning.
Did I say morning?
I don't know. Did he?
Good afternoon, good morning, and good night.
Good evening.
What is it? Good morning, Vietnam, wasn't it?
It was, jeez.
I was going to say it. Forgot myself for a wee second there.
I'm just looking around.
Good evening, Vietnam.
We're starting again.
Andy, you're just not long off a flight. Yesterday, you were over. You missed your beloved Armagh against Tyrone. For the Stadium of Light.
My beloved Sunderland.
Your beloved.
Yeah, my uncle's beloved Sunderland, So
Yeah.
we took a wee lifelong Sunderland fan, and he'd never been before, so
Right.
a posse from the family went over.
What was it like? Have you Have you picked up the lingo?
Not really.
Give us a wee bit, like. Go on. Jimmy Neal, thank you for joining us.
It was good. It was great. A good experience,
And did you get to watch any of the?
Well, we were my uncle's from Portadown, but we were keeping tabs on it on a phone, and then afterwards we got to watch the extra time, on the BBC iPlayer, So what a thriller it was.
We plugged for BBC there.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Great coverage.
Big sporting day yesterday. Before we're going to obviously have we look back at Armagh, Tyrone, Cahair. You and I were there. Still good.
Palpitations.
PTSD from the end of it.
You were full on.
You were full.
I spoke to Neil about 6 times in the last hour and a half last night, and every time the response was "Yep."
Well, for context, so the deadline was obviously our deadline was 9 o'clock last night, and the match started at 4:15 and went to extra time and so forth, and it was stressful. And I normally make fun of Cahair about being zoned in on these games, but last night I must say I was definitely
in the zone.
I was not entertaining any conversation.
Like a force field around you. Just
Definitely not with Mr. O'Kane.
No, he was beside me, and a couple of times he knew better. To be fair, he picked up the vibes pretty quickly. He was like, "Is there anything I can do to help you?" No. Yeah.
I think it was he just said, "Is there anything I can do that's better than shutting up?" That's what I actually said to him.
And I said no.
no.
And I said no.
So there you go. Shutting up was
that's sort of a rule of thumb.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just in case he was struggling,
I appreciate that. Fair play.
Yeah. But anyway, so drove home, listened to the Masters the whole way, and got to watch the end of that. Did you just tap into it a bit yourselves by the time you just got back?
Listened as well. Can't believe what's happened to me, really, like listening to golf on the radio.
I know.
There's something not right about that.
You look like you've just come off the course, to be fair, or out of the clubhouse.
Did 9 holes this morning there.
It's inspired you, has it, Rosie?
I would not know which end of a golf club to hold. Golf is not
it's
my...
just like a hurdle.
No, the golf is not... Well, yep, absolutely. Not really my thing, but I have to say I've definitely got into it over the last few years watching it, and it's nearly unmissable TV now, isn't it? I suppose with Rory...
It's not even Rory, it's Shane Larry, obviously, as well, isn't it? Like, I went in, I just sat down on Saturday evening, turned it on just when he hit these hole-in-one, which was amazing. Like, the first player ever to hit 2 holes in one at the
Masters class. Like
10 years apart, like.
Yeah.
So that's terrific.
By the time we got home, he had fallen way off. He was gone.
He was well back. But, like, whenever I was listening, like, Scotty Scheffler was still on the horizon. Keegan Bradley was clubhouse leader, or not Keegan Bradley. Sorry, Tyrrell Hatton was clubhouse leader. There was a lot still going on, and
Rosie.
Rosie.
When Scheffler got to 11 under and McIlroy was in 13, you kind of thought at that point there might be bother.
Yeah,
but no. And when he went into the trees on the last, it was like you're nearly sitting there. Right, all he has to do is not make a hames of it on the last hole, and then the shot goes into the trees, and you're like, "Oh, geez, is he actually going to do this?"
Yeah.
But
by the context,
I think last year, it's funny. Like if that shot had happened in that position last year, would he have got out of it with all the pressure and all the? And he seemed to, even though he wasn't deadly over the final 2 days, it didn't seem to. It wasn't a pressure thing. It was just a playing poorly thing. But all of that is now.
Sure, he hardly had a fairway the first two.
That's
2 days.
it. And he was 12 under after 2 days.
2.5 days.
Yeah, 2.5.
He was flying into the woods all
the time.
That's right.
Yeah, it was his short game and his putting, which was always his Achilles heel. Look at us, guys.
I know. Look at us. But even I was actually thinking
market for a golf podcast in future. By the way,
I was thinking coming home listening last night because I'd sort of written and talked about Armagh's bravery and things last night, and then I was listening and they were talking about McIlroy on the 13th tee and going over the trees, and nobody had tried that shot all day, and he nailed it. And you're just thinking, like, if he misses that shot or he makes a mess of it, then all of a sudden, has he bottled it again?
Yeah.
That's what people are saying about him. But because he gets the shot, it's like, what a great decision that was. And it's like, what's right and what's wrong? What's the right decision? It's only right when it goes right for you.
That's right.
So,
But obviously that decision that he made to not play any of the tournaments beforehand and to instead, avail of his member status and come out and
Fly out every...
leave the daughter to school, get the jet up to Augusta, play around.
Do not tell the climate change people that.
I know, unbelievable, like, how the other half live. But
you flew in a jet this morning from Saintfield.
yeah, did you? Oh yeah, that's the only way. Yeah. Don't travel any other way these days. Like, so yeah, I must say, I have to confess, like, the day caught up with me prior to the presentation. I passed out on the sofa. I didn't see who. I was actually wondering who puts it on his who puts it on his shoulders.
Apparently, the chairman of the club, I think.
Right.
Because I saw that question asked. Cause somebody said about would it be class if McIlroy was putting Lowry earlier, and they were if McIlroy wins it again, I think it's the club chairman and Augusta. But I didn't stay awake. As soon as the last hole was done, I was like, right, Doug's it's 12:15 here, lads. We have a podcast to do in the morning. I have no homework done, so miss. I'm sorry, I have my homework done today.
Well, you've got it done now. That's important.
More done than I have.
Where's your notes? Where's your paper, Santa?
Where's your paper?
It's all in here.
Okay, so the Tyrone Armagh game yesterday, Cahair, we told them that there was going to be something.
The Monday Club and the Irish News.
Going to be something come. Although
you'll get it right once every year.
Kenny didn't tell him. Like, Kenny said it was Armagh were going to win it handy, I think, and had the fear. But I think, as I kind of said last week, I sort of felt that was part of the whole.
He was playing the Tyrone card there.
I think he was
propaganda machine.
Because we had a few Tyrones.
A lot of propaganda goes on in these seats. Like the other two boys sitting here on Wednesday and
they were falling over each other. No, I think.
You're the favourite. But Tyrone were very average throughout the league, weren't they? But everybody always says it's only the league, right? So you knew they were going to pull something out, going to the athletic grounds. Like, did they pull out what you expected, Cahair? Like, I mean, I know you had kind of made a case for them to some degree last week, and in a way, I actually was thinking of what you said as the first half unfolded, because you were saying about how much ball they had won in through the league and stuff, but that they weren't converting and they weren't making that pay, and the first half just went like that. They actually did okay, but like Ethan Jordan in particular, was shooting from everywhere and missing from everywhere, and you just felt like maybe they weren't capitalising on the opportunity that was there. But again, like all those things. What's the right decision on Ethan Jordan? Because I would have sort of beat the drum all week on. I felt he had to start. I felt it was a sign of Tyrone's approach to the game, whether he started or didn't, but he starts, and then it's in the half when they're kicking into the breeze almost, and it's like you kind of made him redundant. But you don't have that luxury of knowing. If the coin toss took place half an hour before the game, then you could say, right, we'll hold you the second half. Coin toss takes place 3 minutes before throw-in, and you can't at that point pull somebody out and put somebody else in. So he ended up doing a lot of his shooting into the teeth of the wind in the first half, which was difficult. Like, I walked the four corners of the pitch about an hour and a half before the game, and like there was 4 different winds blowing from at every corner. The wind was blowing a different direction, so it was like getting on, and it was definitely against Tyrone in the first half. Was making shooting very awkward, but like the way it unfolded, probably it didn't go quite the way I thought. In terms, obviously Brian Kennedy going off was a big impact on the game in terms of like it actually magnifies Colin Kilpatrick's performance even more, because he was doing the work of 2 men on kickouts, and no matter where Armagh seemed to kick it or tried to kick it away from him, he was underneath it and fighting for it and so Kilpatrick was best performance since probably the All-Ireland final in 21. But like Armagh found a load of really inventive ways out. They went back to the template that they used against Tyrone and Clones last year. A lot of men on sidelines. I would need to go back through the video, but I can't think of too many Armagh overloads yesterday. They were not kicking in the big boxes of 6 men. They were isolated, and Blaine Hughes' kicking was fantastic. So they found a lot of ways out, and actually telling stat, like they won
20 kickouts clean.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot of, you know, ball to win where it didn't come down for a break, or you broke it to yourself and won it yourself. So, like, that's a testament to Blaine Hughes and finding the ways out of it. And, you know, that was probably the reason Armagh actually won the game, in terms of they limited how well Tyrone had done that in previous games. While Tyrone still did okay, they limited to, I think Armagh were 68% on their own kick out, which is against, you know, as I was saying, Tyrone had been up over 60% on the opposition's kick out in the last, so that's, you know, Armagh have gone there from 40 to 68 in terms of what they needed to do. So that's probably the winning of the game, because they got enough ball in hands to just crawl over the line.
And you, like, obviously had a piece in the paper today about the way, or touching on the you mentioned the bravery of Armagh there and the bravery of Rory McIlroy, but the bravery in extra time, down to 14 men to still go after the game, and that was ultimately the winning of it, albeit like Tyrone obviously made it difficult.
Aye, in every way, Armagh went after it very brave. The very first kick out in extra time, because you're looking to see what they'll do. And to an extent, what Tyrone will do, and I do wonder. Again, I probably need to watch it back properly, but I do wonder how much preparation Tyrone had done for a scenario like that, of being a man up and how to get out on the kick out. Malachy O'Rourke said it was an energy thing. They kind of wanted to go narrow and then break wide and use their legs, but what they probably end up did was they made themselves very narrow, and they made themselves easier to press instead of stretching the field wide for themselves, and they couldn't, and they made it easier for Armagh. But Armagh still, like, put 6 into the Tyrone half and left themselves the man light at the back. And if it was that thing of, if Tyrone had ever got one out over the top, the goal was there, and Armagh knew the goal was there, but they still felt that if we step off and give Tyrone the ball, we'll get beat anyway.
Yeah,
you know, so we kind of have to go for it, and that's exactly pretty much what McGuinness said in the post-match. Like, we have no choice. You have to, because possession equals a shot a lot of the time.
These cursed new rules.
That's it. Conleith Gilligan's stat at the press night last week, like, where he had 8.1 shots off of every 10 possessions. Teams in the top 2 flights are getting like that. So, like, effectively the ball is the game, and you can't give them the ball. So whatever you have to do, even if it's completely insane, squeezing up so high. And look, we're not sure, but how much of a factor was Niall Morgan's calf cramping as well, because Armagh had recognised that, and did they feel that Morgan couldn't get out over the top of them with the calf cramping? He couldn't actually kick it that far, so maybe that fed into their decision to press up. But it was bravery. Look, and as I say, if they get caught out over the top, then everybody says they were foolish and they made a mistake, and why did they push up so high? And if Owen McElholm puts the ball in the back of the net, they say, what a brilliant finish, and because he put it wide, it's like, why did he not fist it over the bar? So, like, in anything, all of the analysis is like, you know, there's a huge amount of hindsight with us boys employ, like.
Yeah, there is. Like.
Well, that's it. Some days they can go for you, and some days they can't. Like, Michael Holmes claimed he was fouled, wasn't he? Like, you don't think he was fouled when he?
It was a great piece of defending.
Yeah.
Had you bought into the hype, Andy? Like, you know, like about whether it was like Armagh were on easy street and it was just a matter of turning up, like, as. Well,
not really. Like, I mean, Armagh lost 4 in a row, didn't they, in the league, albeit that they played well, like, you know, in those games, and they were playing at a higher level than Tyrone. Obviously, Tyrone were very average. I saw them against Louth. I must say they were very average. But I suppose Armagh people, and it's, you know, again, it's the championship, isn't it? You know, you just expect Tyrone are going to produce something, like, and which they did. And, you know, we were just talking about Kilpatrick there, and everybody's been waiting for. You know, you said it's the best game he's had since the All-Ireland final. Been waiting years for him to produce that.
Because you see flashes of it every
now and again.
And
so much ability. Like,
in fairness, I've seen him a couple of times, and I have seen him this year now probably more flashes than in previous years as well. I think he has shown a sign that was coming yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, I was at the Cavan game, and I was really impressed with him that day. And I thought he was actually there was things in the Derry game at the start of the year that maybe didn't go his way, but I thought he was still one of Tyrone's best players that night as well. So there were wee signs that was coming back around for him.
Yeah, they have shown enormous faith in him, haven't they? Even like what he changed from being an out and out midfielder into sort of a half forward, didn't he? And they have played him up the field a lot, but I think he rewarded them for that the backing they've put into him over years of sort of average performances.
It does show as well that it shows how light for options Tyrone are in that area. When he went off yesterday, and they didn't really have a like for like replacement at all. They didn't really have a natural midfielder on the bench to call on, and you're kind of plugging gaps, and that's part of it too. Like they've had, Kilpatrick and Kennedy in terms of Tyrone football have looked like head and shoulders above anybody else in midfield. There's nobody in club football. They obviously brought in Donny from Loughran McIlroy this year, but he left the panel again pretty quickly, and they haven't really looked.
Joe O'Goose
has been
more of an
injured.
attacking midfielder.
He hasn't been in the panel.
Ben McDonald's sort of the same sort of thing.
Ben ended up playing at 12, and Ben had a pretty good impact on that as well in terms of allowing Armagh to get ways out. He hung wide, and he offered them options too, and he got the goal. But Tyrone, they brought a fair bit to the game. Armagh were in a great position after 15-20 minutes. It was like, is this going to be a contest at this stage? But they fought their way back into it. Armagh probably dipped off, but they just missed. Yeah, they missed too many shots. I think Tyrone missed 26 shots. You missed 26. That's a lot of shooting to be missing. And look, we've talked about their conversion over the last couple of years, and that it came for them. Look, Armagh missed a lot as well. They missed 16. But 26 is a massive number of shots to miss. So
did Armagh get it? Well, I suppose Armagh were 14 men. Armagh sort of got away with it. I suppose Geezer said that today, like they weren't at their best. But
he argued. He said, because I said to him after, if you had stopped that game on 55 minutes and you were 10-0 down, could you have complained that you got beat at that point? And he said, we could, because we had more shots than them at that stage. But you could say they got away with it in some regards, but I would be more inclined to lean towards them getting the reward for being brave in extra time. And even aside from the kickouts, even when Tyrone had possession, Armagh were still trying to stop them getting out of their own half, because it's obviously in the Armagh half that they're then the man light. So it was almost as if get the ball over halfway and we have an advantage. So Armagh were like, let's stop them getting the ball over halfway. So they did a lot of work to try and keep the ball as high up the pitch as they could. And that was brave, and so I feel like I say they got rewarded for their bravery, but in a lot of ways Tyrone were brave too and didn't get rewarded. And it, didn't you look at that game on the whole, and would you say like it wasn't a particularly brilliant game for a good while? You wouldn't necessarily say it was a game where both teams were mad brave in terms of being really fluid or free flowing or anything, but they were brave in the way that they were setting up against the opposition team and the way they were going after them.
Yeah, good physical Ulster.
It felt like an old
ultimately
game.
Tyrone just didn't have that quality that they needed to win it, really.
And where will both counties be now, Andy? Do you think when they come to review this? Because obviously, like from Tyrone's perspective, like Brian Kennedy's injury looked pretty serious. I think they were saying it was a knee injury. Was it?
Malachy said it was some kind of knee ligament, but he didn't know to what extent or to what. That could be anything. That could be a slight strain, or that could be
because he missed the early stages of the league as well, Brandon.
He has, and he's
through the ringer.
Some of the games that he has
bad
played. He's had
a couple of years ago,
So, and then Dara Canavan obviously came off with a hip flexor issue as well. They've 6 weeks now.
Did he get a surgery on that?
He had surgery at the start of the year. I think it was ankle.
On the ankle last year, or at the end of last year, I think, or something like that. Yeah, but
6 weeks.
7 weeks now, is it? Until the 31st.
They're the second group out.
Okay.
The Ulster teams are the second group out.
So they've a bit of time now to review. They maybe would want the momentum to carry on after that. Although if you have that many bodies to heal, they'd be glad of the time in some ways. But Armagh obviously have Fermanagh next as well. Like, how do you think the two counties will be looking back on yesterday?
Well, it's obviously a performance Tyrone needed. I think Malachy O'Rourke needed it, didn't he? To go down there and push so close. Ultimately, they didn't win it though. So 7 weeks now to sort of, I suppose, kick their heels in the sidelines. You know, they'll be seeing it as an opportunity missed out. You know, really, you know, they'll be going to Fermanagh. Obviously, you know, there have been heavy favourites for that. The next thing, they're in Ulster final, and that momentum. You know, the flip side.
Semi-final against Donegal.
Of course, sorry, yeah, of course.
But the momentum would have carried on from there, basically. But at the same time, even in defeat, as you said, because the mood music around Tyrone coming into the game was, you know, there was so much negativity. Like, in a way, even in defeat, it can galvanise things, can't it? Like,
it could have done, but it was, a 7-week break. I think it's really going to be sort of dissipated or evaporated by that time, isn't it?
Depends how they, you know, what they do with that 7 weeks. Is hard. Obviously, challenge games are very difficult because everybody's playing. You might get teams that are knocked out of provincial championships. And I've seriously dubbed. I was thinking there could be 6 as well because they're not an Ulster finalist. The Ulster finalists are 7 weeks from the day, but it depends who they get drawn to because it could be 6. But anyway, the thing that really struck me was at the end of normal time when they got extra time out of it. The reaction of the Tyrone crowd was the first time in a long time that I've seen a Tyrone crowd react to the team the way that they did yesterday. I could see Tyrone people running down to the tunnel to where the team was coming in to nearly, you know, to a face, to a man. Let's show we really appreciated that performance. Like, we really appreciated the fact you have taken Armagh extra time and the players responding. You can see Niall Devlin giving it the fist pumps, and it felt like
that's what they've been lacking, isn't it? You know, that, you know, everybody, and you know, just that passion, really, isn't it? You know, that's what they have been accused of lacking. You know, that
it has felt a bit flat,
like
it has. You know, it has been missing. You know, in terms of the crowd's response to the team as well. And that was, and you're talking about things that could propel them through the next 6 weeks. Like, I think there's a lot of energy, positive energy for them to take out of that game for sure. And it's just now how they manage that, and also then the couple of injuries that they do. Because, like, make no mistake, if Brian Kennedy is out, that's a monumental loss. That's a season-ending loss for Tyrone as a team, because he is such a, like, yesterday. The first half was the 5th consecutive throw and he'd won. Things like, you know, he's just so strong.
Yeah, you get to Croke Park as well. He's been terrific there, hasn't he? For him,
he's just going to be an enormous loss if he's not fit for 6 weeks' time. So that, you know, more so than probably Derek Canavan at the minute, just in terms of what
his
they
importance
need
and where they are.
You know, because they don't
have in that department.
They don't have a natural replacement for him. They don't have anybody that you're saying, right, well, sure, we can stick him in beside Kilpatrick. So you'd really worry for Tyrone if Kennedy's knee is bad.
Okay, so turning our attention to this weekend's Ulster quarterfinals. First up on Saturday evening in Find Insurance Celtic Park.
Good boy.
is Derry against Antrim.
Give it its proper title.
And it's so, I mean, if we're looking at it in its most basic terms, it's a team on a bit of a crest of a wave that was pushing for promotion from Division 2, looks to have its mojo back a bit in Derry, and an Antrim side that missed out on promotion from Division 4. So it's very hard to make any kind of case for Antrim, I would suspect. Cahair, is that, like, is there, whenever you look at a tie like this, is Derry's biggest opponent in some ways their own potential complacency on a day like this, because everything tells you it should be straightforward?
Yeah, well, look, it's hard to say otherwise. You know, really, when you look at Antrim's championship record over the years against teams that are above them, it's not powerful. So that alone tells you that Antrim are always facing the uphill battle, and for any team, particularly out of those top 3 or 4, and like Derry are probably, you know, I think everybody would have them in the top 3, if not 4 for sure. In Ulster,
might have gone down the pecking order.
At the minute,
they were second favourites for Ulster last week, weren't they?
They were their second favourites, but that's probably largely to do with the draw as well. That the bookies know they'll be the strongest on that side. So that's bookies. There's not such thing as a poor bookie. Like they, I'm sure Donegal.
Second favourites to win it, not get the final. You know, it's
but you have to get there to win it, though.
Exactly. Yeah.
They like Antrim are coming up on the back of 4 consecutive wins. Now, Mark Dorn has sort of said from day one that he felt that they would get stronger as the league went on. He said at the very start he felt the start of the league had come a couple of weeks too early for them in terms of the training he put them through. He found the players then were breaking down. The bodies couldn't cope with the physical demand of what he was trying to impose, and so they were down a couple of key players at the start of the league, and those like Peter Healy and Dominic McInhill have come back in and have made a significant difference to them. Like, they've had a couple of decent results in the last few weeks, and even like, he made reference to it himself in the press event last week, where he said the Longford game, and everybody saw the scoreline from the Longford game, and he went back and watched the video and saw like they had 41 shots against Longford, which is a massive number. Like, so he's like, in terms of performance, we were probably better than the scoreline was suggesting. So, look, I don't know. Can you make a case for Antrim? Like, the whole Corrigan thing last year, going in to face Armagh, they had the energy of that. They don't have that this time. There's no cause to rally behind.
They don't have Paddy McBride to kick 4 2-pointers.
Absolutely, that's a big factor.
Yeah.
Like, Paddy McBride's a big loss to them. He, as much as he did really well in the first half against Armagh, if he hadn't kicked those 2-pointers, it would have been all for nothing. Like, they were big scores, and every time he got one was just the right time to get one. And I just don't know. Like, I can't make a case for them. I don't think anybody.
I'm not asking you to
No,
make
I don't think anybody
case,
can make
but
a solid case for them going up to Derry and winning, because Derry are just a level above where Antrim are at the minute. And
well, how did Derry approach this then?
Look, Derry have probably and I would imagine this would be Kieran Mooney's approach on the basis of the last 2 years. Derry have no right to treat anybody as cannon fodder. They haven't won championship games. They haven't done enough themselves to say this is easy street for us. Derry have to bring a performance and see where that takes them.
Yeah, they have to go out and beat on, and it's like Armagh yesterday. If they beat them by a point, which is highly unlikely, I'd say it'll be double figures between them and get over the line, and that's it. Doesn't that mean that they're not going to be looking like look like world beaters against Antrim? They're going to have to save that, but it's just like a professional performance on home soil. Do the job, move on.
It's a level Derry have and are playing at. Like, they've played a lot of Division 1 football, Division 2, but a strong Division 2 this year against a lot of decent teams. And like, I remember chatting to Owen McCabe at the start of this year, and he talked a lot about the Armagh game last year, and he said like the GPS would have shown them that was the single most intense game that they'd ever played in. The level of it in that first half, the level of it, and they found it unsustainable. They kind of collapsed physically after half time, and he said like he said he was wrecked for 2 weeks after it. His body wasn't right, and like, there's a man who everybody keeps
PT,
himself in order,
yeah.
So
that's his job, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
like, so that is where Antrim are probably,
Because of the level that they're playing at, as much
partly
as
because of
anything.
the level they're playing at, and then the level that they're kind of used to operating at internally as well. I know you're going back, but when every team takes an upward trajectory, an upward spurt, it generally comes from a physical thing first. When Jim McGuinness went into Donegal in 2010, and like, the way that he trained them was beyond the level that they'd ever trained at before.
Derry and the work that they did
Derry
through
and the work
COVID
that they
and
did under Rory McIlroy. So that is a massive factor, and it's like Mark Dorn said about the injuries. So he was trying to up the level of the training and make it, and then the bodies were breaking down because you can't do it overnight. It takes time and it takes patience, and so and then if you're not getting the games at that level, it's almost like a vicious cycle, and it goes back to the point of needing out of Division 4 and then needing out of Division 3 as well. Beyond that, so if they could ever get themselves to Division 2, that's probably like a really brilliant medium term goal
ambition
for Antrim. That's where they should be focusing all the way, and they did. In fairness, they said they wanted to go after the league, and it didn't happen at all. But it's not for the lack of having eyes on it.
Well, Mark Doran just on, obviously, like, he's an experienced coach, like, down Clare,
Well, he's been with Slot Neil for a couple of years. He was linked with the Derry job, so he knows what's there.
His job is to stay there and bring those levels up, because I would say, like, you know, he would know from his previous experience, like the Antrim levels of where they're at in terms of like the training, etc., is just well below, you know, the top counties, and that's all part of his brief and his mission, isn't it? Like with Antrim to bring them up and change the culture in a way.
Well, like even I spoke to Michael McCann a few months ago, and obviously he's been around Antrim setups for the most of the last couple of decades, and he said exactly that. You know, that like it can never be short-termism in Antrim. So even when those, you know, first 3 league games and the disappointment that comes with that, like there does have to be some element of kind of thinking, okay, well, what's going on behind the scenes? Where's this thing headed? But that said, it is difficult. Like I've been impressed by the fact that they you know, you mentioned that they lost arguably their best player during that period, and those games could have just really taken the air out of the entire year for them. The way that went, because that was essentially promotion gone. Like, albeit they did kind of force themselves back in it, but like they're putting up huge scores there the last 4 games, and like you've spoken to Mark Dorn a few times, Andy. Like even when he's been with Antrim, like do you get the impression of him that he's happy enough with where they are?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think coming from where he's, you know, where he's been and the players that he would have worked with, you know, the setups that he's been in, he would see that Antrim are. He potentially could see that Antrim are well down, and he needs to drag them up. But I think, like, even if you look at Armagh, like, you couldn't say, you know, Armagh, this is a golden generation of players or whatever that have come through for Armagh, that have won minor titles, McCrory, Hogan Cups, whatever, right? But you know, you just have a group there under that management. You get the right coaching systems in place, and you bring them through. And even Armagh have lost, you know, X, Y, and Z, you know, top players this year. You know, they're still able to replace those players, you know, so that is a challenge for any county, isn't it? To bring together a group who are prepared to commit back to the manager, and then, you know, you will see results eventually, like, and that's really what Antrim, you know, where Antrim are at the minute. Like.
It's one of the biggest problems for any county that's trying to climb the ladder. That is almost the single biggest problem, is the revolving door of a county panel, like players coming and going and squads chopping and changing on an annual basis, and some new managers come in after 2 or 3 years, and 7 boys go and 7 new boys come in, and then you're nearly starting to square. And like you can see that, even though they want to avoid it in some ways, like they've brought in a lot of new players themselves, like, and there's been a lot of change to the Antrim panel again this year, so it's nearly feels like every couple of years you're back at square one, and you can't keep and look, Down had that problem for a long time.
Down that was crazy. It was literally a revolving door, wasn't it? You know, boys
every year,
like, you know, and then obviously managers, there was quite a bit of chopping change there, but
then you see whenever you do get a consistency there of management and players and that buy-in, you can see that it can go, you know, the level it can. You can move through.
Yeah, and Monaghan, obviously, the consistency there, they
were absolutely.
You know,
and
everybody,
for 15 years,
year after year, you know, and all putting it in, and you know,
and that is what it takes. Like Derry were notoriously bad at a stage. Like I think there was a stage where there was a 10-year run where they had over 100 players played championship football. Over 100 players. So you were looking at an average of about 10 new players in your team every year for a full decade. How do you build anything on that? And that's where counties who are struggling are generally at. That's the thing that bothers them most. They just can't build. Players don't believe enough to buy into it, and it's like, nah, that's enough, I'm away. I'll take a couple of years out of that and maybe come back. And it's like, just, you can't ever get the building blocks, can't ever get anything set on top of the building blocks, like to build the house, like. So they that's probably, look, it's where Antrim are at. They don't need us to tell them that. They'll know that.
All about consistency. Like, look at the Irish new sports team.
Models of consistency.
Producing like
go on,
mediocre quality.
If you do say so yourself. We'll turn our attention to Cavan and Monaghan in Clonus on Sunday, and I can pull out all the cliches about how close these games always are, and how, you know, ever the rulebook goes out the window whenever Cavan and Monaghan come together. But in terms of where both counties are at the minute, I don't think that there's huge expectations around from either of them. You know, like obviously Monaghan have been relegated from Division 1, didn't win a game. Cavan just avoided relegation to Division 3. There'd be a big focus on this, but I don't know. Maybe the difference slightly is that I think Monaghan maybe are looking at it like with some players coming back that if they were to get over Cavan, then they would actually fancy a bit of a cut at most likely Derry, and they would fancy that. Whereas I don't know that there's necessarily that optimism in Cavan. You know, I think
Cavan people always expect.
Do they? I don't know. Well, we'll come to that. Like, but I don't. They do generally, but I don't know if it's this year they do because it's all a bit flat. But Cahair, like, do you see? The two of them are at a difficult enough point in their development, you would say.
You said there about Cavan were lucky not to get relegated to Division 3. The thing that keeps coming back to me is that Gabriel Brannigan saying after one of Monaghan's games that they were lucky they were in Division 1 because if they'd been in Division 2 there's a good chance they were going to Division 3. Yeah. That's how far off they were and have been in terms of performances, and then players missing and the retirements, all the rest of it. The change in the team over the last 18 months has been massive. Cavan, Cavan have looked. I was actually surprised last year. I thought Cavan would go down, and they started the league really well and ended up nearly. You know, they were at one stage it looked like they might go up out of Division 2, which they didn't, but they've been in a cycle where they've had a lot of the same team for a long time, and they were a bit like Monaghan in some ways, in that when it dropped, you were like, right, you know, because obviously they won the 4 Ulster under-21s back at the start of the 2010s, and that fed a lot of the next 10, 12 years, and it's like, when that goes, what's next? Because they haven't had any sort of. They've had the odd minor team, but they haven't had any sustained run of anything at underage level. And you're almost, you know, you're worried for a drop off there. You're worried for a cliff edge for them. And then obviously Dermot McCabe came in, and he kind of, in some ways, he sped the process up by culling his panel, and different players were left. Like the list of players that they're down from last year: Padraig Faulkner, Killian Clark, Oisin Kiernan, Cian Madden, Sean McAvoy, Killian Brady, Cian Riley's injured at the minute, Luke Fortune. Like the number of players that they have, couple retired, couple weren't brought back, and it's like it just feels like they've actually probably done well to stay up. You know, and like Tyrone took the points off the 3 teams above them. Cavan took their points off the 2 teams below them, and Cavan took their points off the teams below them. So they were probably exactly where they deserved to be, which was 6th in Division 2. Yeah. And if Monaghan had been in Division 2, would they have finished above that or below that? Probably finished in around that. So
I think the concern from a Cavan point, possibly, as you said, you know, can be happy to have stayed up and count themselves, you know, they've done well to stay up, but the concern probably is that performances have dipped consistently through the league, you know, maybe until the last day in Derry, but albeit then Derry were kind of holding them at arm's length anyway. But you know, the first game out against Cork, like, there were 7 points up with 10 minutes left to go or something, and Cork scored the last 8.
Meath as well weren't in the second game. They were beating Meath after 65 minutes.
They were in a decent position against Meath. I can't remember exactly, but they were well in that game, and lost it. And you take Cork and Meath, but I suppose they were early in the league, but they give them both a good run, and they won those 2 games again. It's a totally different campaign again. So it's a fine enough line, but like, we can talk around this. There is just something about, I know you said it's a cliche, like, but there just is something about Cavan Monaghan games. Like, you go back
on a life of their own.
Well, they've played 13 times in the championship since '87, and of those 13, 9 have been decided by a goal or less. Yeah. And Paddy Lynch scored the goal at the end of the last one. That was a tight game, and he scored the goal begging out, and that put 6 in it, and that's the first time
result was an outlier.
That's the first time there's been more than 5 points in it in all that time. Like, so like, there is going to be nothing in this, like, and it comes down. I just think, even though all they've lost, Monaghan still have a fair wee bit of when you look through their team, there's still a fair wee bit of experience on the field, starting in terms of Beggan, O'Toole, Wiley, McInnesby, Ward, O'Hanlon, Bannigan, McCarran, and those boys have played a fair lot of county football.
McCarthy to come in, isn't he? And Lavelle. Who else?
Well, I wouldn't be counting on those.
McCarthy possibly might be available, I think, but Lavelle, I think, is still.
No, I think
he's back, is he?
Was saying,
okay.
Both of them are in contention.
Well, he'd be a huge boost, wouldn't he? Lavelle,
Lavelle. It depends where they play him, but I would see him. If he was fit and at himself, he goes to full back on Paddy Lynch, and that frees O'Toole up. Because at the minute you're looking at O'Toole playing at full back on Paddy Lynch, and then that sort of takes away from his.
Again, Paddy Lynch looks low on confidence too, though. Like, it's not.
He was really well. Look, Derry made a decision in the league game to take Brenton Rodgers out of midfield and to put Rodgers on him. And in fairness, like, Rodgers is a brilliant defender, and Lynch had kicked well in a couple of games beforehand. He got no change out of Brenton Rodgers whatsoever, but there aren't too many Brenton Rodgerses about. Like, you would think that he would have more impact on the game on Sunday, and he is still finding his way back as well. Like, it's a long road back from that injury, but. Whether they have enough around him, like, where do they play Darren McVitie? Like, Dermot McCabe has kept his numbers so small in terms of the players that he has used and picked from, that it's actually nearly hard to pick their team in terms of, if he's missing one who has played a bit of football, who's coming in behind.
Is he playing McVitie up front or
played him bits everywhere? He played him. Named at 6 and played a bit at 6. He played a bit inside. He played a bit at centre forward. It seemed it's like, I don't know where he'll play.
On centre forward, wouldn't he? Like
centre forward puts him into Desi Ward more than likely. I don't know that either side particularly wants that. Don't know that it suits either team to have that matchup. So I think they might both avoid that for their own sakes, even. If then,
because they don't want to nullify, they don't want to cancel.
They don't want to cancel each other out. They don't want, they don't want that battle. So I would say they might go with McVitie inside alongside Lynch and try and get joy out of it. Try and get joy inside.
You spoke to Gabriel Bannigan at the Ulster Championship launch a few weeks ago, Andy, and they're probably. Even though the league campaign was really tough and the guys that they're missing, it's well enough documented. But there was a positivity that came out of the last game against Donegal. Like, it was the first time they'd scored over 20 points, I think. Albeit Donegal obviously had eyes elsewhere by that stage. Like, we were probably looking to the league final and so forth. But did you get the feeling from Bannigan that there's like, all is not lost, that kind of sense, or what's the feeling about where Monaghan are after the campaign?
I certainly got the feeling that he's sort of trying to gather up all the energy, like, for to push back or to bounce back from it. Like, it's funny how the year started. You would have thought, looking in, that it was quite positive for Monaghan. They got to the McKenna Cup final. Lots of new faces coming through. Scottstown obviously won the Ulster Club, and started the league. You'd be thinking, like, after a very positive pre-season, these Scottstown guys are going to come in. Obviously that wasn't the case. McCarthy was injured. McCarran didn't feature. Rory Beggan, Killian Lavelle, as we mentioned, like, all these guys that were missing. The Armagh,
Dylan Byrne went off injured, didn't he, in the first game against Armagh, and hasn't played since.
McInnesby. So there was
like, those are not insignificant losses. When you look at Monaghan, sure, it's not like, because they've never operated off a huge pull, and it's similar to, like, Vinnie Corey's last year. Like, it doesn't take a lot for. I don't want to say the wheels to come off, but it doesn't take a lot to destabilise things. Like, in Vinnie Corey's last year, they had lost a number of players to injury. Like, Roy Beggan's American dream was still alive, and so they were without him for a time. So, it's
kind of what we were talking about there. I think he made 16 debutants throughout the league. There's no consistency, is there, in selection? You just don't have that luxury of being able to put out tried and tested players. So.
And the experience as well. Like if you
experience,
I mean, we spoke last week, didn't we, about the Tyrone's defensive disorganisation at times because of the lack of leaders, the experienced guys that they were missing, the likes of Padraig Campsey and Kieran McGeary and stuff. And for any panel like Monaghan who have been so reliant on so many of those experienced guys for so long, to lose that, like that's naturally going to have a big effect.
Absolutely, yeah. In terms of winning the ball, keeping the ball, strategies, getting it forward, the confidence to know when shots are on, etc. That filters right through the team. But yeah, obviously they haven't won a game all season. They're playing their better rivals in Clonus. Monaghan Cavan played the first ever Ulster final, didn't they? 1888. So it's a cracking game. I love it. It really is one of those unique sort of Ulster battles. So they obviously need to produce whatever they've got in the tank. I think we'll see it coming out.
Are you going to spare Andy your joke you gave to Kenny last week about being there?
Were you there? What was it like? I know. I did. I thought about it and I thought I can't do it 2 weeks ago.
If
there'd even been,
even though you made a mess of it last week.
Oh, I know.
You actually said 1980.
Were you there? So
it probably was.
It's all about consistency. And
I was, and he was about 40. There you go. But kind of made up for it.
Sorry, just like Monaghan's retirements, you take Carl O'Connell, Darren Hughes, Kieran Duffy out this year. The players they'd lost in the previous years, Kieran McNulty's in Australia, Gary Mohan hasn't played since round 4. Stephen Mooney's been out injured.
Niall Kearns disappeared
Niall
off the
Kearns,
scene.
Gone. Like, and then Lavelle and McCarthy and Byrne. Like it's when you have a small playing pool, that is a savage hit. And Cavan's hit has been different in terms of they made decisions around a few players, and so they haven't had the same injury crisis in terms of injuries. Like Cian Riley and Barry Donnelly are out long term, and Paddy Mead has missed the last 2. Don't know if he'll be fit or not, but like Ryan Brady, that's it.
Cormac O'Reilly, I think, is likely to be out as well.
So, Monaghan have probably had more bad luck, if you know what I mean, on that run. But that's, in terms of Sunday's game, it still all looks very close for all of it. And like if it looks close when it's them two, there's a good chance it's going to be close. Yeah.
And just a final word on Cavan. Like there is a bit of a, probably the elephant in the room slightly, but there is a bit of a disconnect in some ways, like with. Like there wouldn't be great relations, I don't think, between the management and some of the local media, and I think you get the sense that there's not a huge buzz about Cavan football necessarily at the minute. Maybe I'm picking that up wrong, but I don't know. There were 620 people at their game against Offaly, which I think was the lowest ever, outside of COVID, lowest ever Division 2 attendance. I don't want to overplay, that how much that kind of line of communication necessarily matters, but it does feed into maybe a general sense of just not being the interest there that would be in the past.
No, I think that's probably fair enough. That attendance figure in itself is very telling. And it's probably partly a wee bit of they won the Ulster title in 2020. And it was COVID year and they didn't get the buzz. As we talked about Tyrone's All Ireland 21 as well last week, Cavan probably didn't get the good out of the winning the Ulster that they might have done in terms of lifting the county. But that even at that point felt like a squad that was getting its rewards for a long time of service. And this is now 6 years on. Still a good few of that squad are there, but a lot of it is drifting away now. And I think the public in Cavan are looking at it and saying, where's the next team coming from? We're back to the revolving door thing. Like they've had so many different players over the last 3 or 4 years who have come in, played a couple of games, gone. The fringes of the team around the core players have never built any real consistency, and so you're probably looking at it. And there's just that lack of real belief that they're going somewhere, or going to do something.
That's what I was sort of saying at the start. Like even though like there would be like a confidence that they can win this weekend, it's more the bigger picture, even in terms of this year. Like because it could just peter out very quickly.
It could, and being on the game. Look, they'll. I felt that they took a lot from the Derry game from the last game of the league. You know, Derry beat them by 4 points, and Derry needed to win to go up on different things. But I can't remember. I would need to go back and check. But there was a couple of stats, a couple of numbers in that game that said to me, I didn't think Cavan played that well. I'll be honest. Like I didn't think Derry played well, and I felt that they were still good enough to get over Cavan. Who
did it ever feel like Cavan were a threat?
Not really. Cavan kicked a couple of 2-pointers against the wind, sort of midway through the second half, that brought them right into it on the scoreboard. Still didn't feel like a game that Derry were going to lose, but it doesn't strike you from the outside that Cavan are sitting in the long grass waiting for somebody here. Maybe they are, and look, like anything, you know. They won on Sunday, they get a spark out of it. Monaghan won on Sunday, they get a spark out of it. Whether they're actually good enough then, whether they have quality beyond that to trouble the better 2 or 3 or 4 teams in Ulster is the question. And the thing about, again, Cavan's small pool that they're using probably makes them for an opposition team. It makes them a bit of a dream, because they're so, you can analyse them so easily. You know, they're almost the same. And like other teams keep a pretty solid routine, but there's always we Armagh. You look at their 15 and you think, right, it didn't change much from last week, but there's always the threat that they could actually make 4 or 5 changes, and you're not sure. And what if he comes in, and what if he does this, and what if he does this? Whereas with Cavan, you're almost dead set certain of what their team is going to be, and so it makes, you're watching video footage of them. You're going to be pretty sure of what it is that they're going to do, and how they're going to play, and who they're going to play, and where they're going to play them. There's not, other than McVitie, where he'll play. There's not that much uncertainty. And I know, kind of arguing against myself, because one of the big things for Derry and Down and those teams was consistency, but you probably just need a wee bit more behind it as well, in terms of. He's a threat.
Options,
I suppose that's what Dermot McCabe's going to be looking for, isn't he? Like, what can we bring somebody new from training? Is it we're going to see him give him a go now?
We saw that 20s team beating Tyrone in the first week, didn't they? Albeit
I think it's maybe a wee bit early.
They lost,
but they're gonna need something, aren't they? But you'd have to say Monaghan haven't come out of the league, with having taken a bit of a battering, they played all right in some games, didn't they? A decent half against Galway. Should have beat Dublin, in fairness, at Croke Park. Missed a lot of goal chances that night. Played well against Donegal. So Monaghan's probably slight favourites for it, aren't they? Particularly if they can get some of those guys back, which they're hoping to.
That Donegal game was just important for their confidence more than anything, just to end the league on some sort of an uplift, even though they didn't win it. They went out and scored 3-15, and that will give them a wee bit. And I think they'll probably know in their heart of hearts how on it were Donegal, but at the same time, at least Monaghan brought their own performance up a level.
They can take
they can take a fair wee bit out of that.
If they had have ended the league like they started it, that game against Armagh, I mean, there probably wouldn't be much point in them turning up. That there certainly was that upturn, and that they will take positives from it. But then again, Cavan as well. I know that when you look at the table, it looks like they didn't do much, but. Some might say, they'll be happy enough with that league, staying in Division 2. Obviously, it was a good standard, Division 2, isn't it? They did push the 2 finalists hard in the opening 2 games. Had that gone differently, they might have been in the promotion shake-up, so,
Put your head in the block, Colin.
I really did.
Monaghan?
I mean, I listen.
I was. Just have to put it out there in one word. Definitely.
He was at Amen corner there.
Definitely, Monaghan.
Monaghan for you as well?
Oh, not definitely. Well, Cavan won the last
3
as well.
Just said definitely.
No, I didn't mean. I said them back in front. Monaghan definitely, not definitely Monaghan.
Right.
Cavan won the last 3 there, and they're bound to feel that, why would Monaghan beat us? Kind of thing at this point, and that's probably fair enough. So, look, am I going to Clonus on Sunday? Because if I am, it's probably going to go to extra time like every other game I go to.
Absolutely.
So, to run and joke in our house now at this stage.
Can't leave the house.
Paddy Tierney sees me coming into the press box and he say,
Oh, no.
have to back the draw of the day, lads.
Yeah.
Because
You won't be home for supper of the night.
no supper of the night, lads, no. Chicken and fella burger out of Cafello's
Oh, aye.
last night on the way home.
Yeah.
It's
I'll
bad.
give him a wee plug, sure. Why not?
Aye,
He
but
always
nice.
gets somebody in for a plug like before we're done. Like, you
Oh,
know.
Mr. Find Insurance
He's on
over there in the
he's on
corner.
a retainer. They're actually paying. Like. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of this week's podcast. Any golf this week? No, we're not. We've done enough
Any
golf.
go-
haven't
any
we?
golf? No, sorry, no
we'll leave
golf.
that there.
Any paddle?
Dear, that's another story.
For another
Paddle,
time.
paddle
Don't mind,
champion
aye.
of the universe.
Indeed,
Neil
yes,
Loughran.
I'll spare you that. Andy Waters, Cahair O'Kane, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, as always, to our sponsors, Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. We will be back with another episode of the Monday Club next week, but in the meantime, remember to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen. We'll see you then.